And I am now live. All right, we all know the drill. I'll take a sip of water while staring into the camera. Waiting for people to join. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of Geek Speaks Greek. I am your geek, George O'Connor. I'm clearly speaking English. The Greek in this instance that I'm speaking about is Greek mythology. Each episode of Geek Speaks Greek, I explore a different personage from ancient Greek myth, be they goddess, god, hero, or monster. And we are in the middle of Redo Week. How about that for state of the art, right? So if you've been watching this since the beginning, basically once the quarantine started happening, I originally started doing these actually to support my local independent bookstore, Word Books, a great bookstore here in both Brooklyn and across the river in New Jersey. They have a couple locations. So I started doing these Geek Speaks Greeks, and we started with Apollo because he was the god of plagues and healing. It made a lot of sense. And then the next step was to talk about Hermes. Hermes is I'll just say it up front, he's my favorite of all the Olympians, of all gods, everywhere. He's my fave. And unfortunately, those two first episodes, I was new to this. This was something I just started doing. I didn't save them correctly, so they were lost. So in that first week, we covered, the first two episodes, we covered Apollo and his son Asclepius, the god of healing, and then we covered Hermes and his son Pan. So I did Apollo on Monday. You can actually go see that if you missed it. It's up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/George Olympians. All the episodes are up there except for those first two, so hence the redo. And then I'm doing today, on his day, Hermes' day, is Wednesday. I mean, we'll get into that later. I'm redoing Hermes. And then on Friday, I'm going to do Hermes' son Pan. Asclepius getting pushed off, I guess, is some future date. I try to do these themed weeks, but, who knows? Maybe I'll do it Monday. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a thing about my Lego Olympians. I've been threatening to do that for a while. Somebody yesterday mentioned, me wanting just a book on sources. I might do that. Who knows? You guys can't stop me. This is me at my house. Let's talk about this. It's been a while that we've been inside. If you've watched all my episodes, you know that this shirt has appeared before. This is my happy shirt. On days when I'm feeling particularly blah, I wear this shirt because it's Bigfoot and it's got this kind of cool sun. It makes me feel like it's the 70s or something. It's pretty dope. Today in New York, it couldn't be grayer and wetter and just blah. So it's a kind of hard day to keep in my energy. Normally this would be the sort of day where I would be drinking coffee too, because I often drink coffee here. But man, I drank too much coffee already. So water it is. So before I dive into talking about Hermes, I want to share some of the fan art that you all have been sending in, because it's been coming in huge bits. It's gotten to the point where I literally just can't show everything that I'm getting, and I'm really sorry. So I've been trying to alternate between people, because sometimes some people have been saying stuff every day and thank you so much. I'm looking at all your artwork. I'm loving all your artwork. If you decide to draw something, please send it to my email at georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. I always do a little bit of drawing. Oh, check this out. This is pretty exciting. So the episode was lost, right? But I found the actual artwork I drew for it. So if you joined me yesterday, I don't know where the Apollo drawings were. I suspect I didn't actually draw Apollo. I think I just had artwork from his books, the actual original artwork when I drew the book Apollo, the brilliant one. I almost forgot the name of my own book there. Did you see that? So these are the actual drawings I did. So there's a kind of side view of Hermes holding his caduceus. Yes. A front-on shot of Hermes. Pretty cool. And, and there's Pan from that same episode. There's tons of these old drawings. I thought it was neat that there was this remnant, this artifact of this lost episode. Let me skip to a blank page, though, because, I'm going to want to be drawing some stuff. But before... should have done this before, huh, guys? Before we get too into this... All right, there we go. I want to share some of your artwork. Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's from yesterday. Never mind. Guys. So, up first... and I have to show this one first because this one made me very happy. On Monday's episode, I got a piece of mail from a new person to the show named Jackson, who sent several really excellent drawings, but Jackson proclaimed themselves my biggest fan. Well, turns out that was a controversial statement because Ilya wrote in saying that I'm your biggest fan. I don't want to cause a fight. I have room for plenty of biggest fans. I mean, realistically speaking, it's probably not my mom, but maybe my girlfriend's my biggest friend, or maybe, probably my cats. But everyone, you could all be my biggest fans, and I could be your biggest fans. We could be reciprocal about this. But Ilya sent in this picture. She did not, well, she did draw God. She drew Apollo there. But she drew me. Check it out. I got my interesting t-shirt on, holding the pen, the glasses, the messy hair, and the sloppy beard, holding the cup of coffee, not doing it today. And this is where she really nailed me. Like, the drawing was perfect, but then, I am saying in this, because it's backwards, I'm going to read it to you. I love Hera. Theseus is a jerk. It's Heracles! Which, I mean, if there was an action figure of me where or a doll like Woody from Toy Story, and you pulled it on the back, that would probably be 3 of the things I said. And the 4th would be I don't know, I'm sleepy or something. Ilya, thank you very much. That's hilarious. I love that piece so much. These are from Alicia. Oh no, these are also from Ilya. I'm sorry, Alicia must be. There is a picture of Apollo. That's great. I mean, I love that drawing. And then here, because I kind of lamented, nobody really drew a Metis. Here's Metis. But again, this is a whole scene. And we got a full-on Helios up there in the sky. Watch this. I really like this kind of trend that's coming where people are creating scenes and adding in. It makes sense. If you draw the sun, you're drawing ancient myth, you got to draw Helios because he was the sun. Ilya, those drawings are incredible. This one. All right, this isn't, I just wanted to share this. This isn't even artwork. So the week where we kind of studied goddesses, I designed them live as we watched. We did Nyx, we did Nemesis, and we did Amphitrite. Amphitrite, I always do that. Amphitrite actually did make this one appearance in the book, but it was one panel. So I kind of designed her live and talked about her. And I talked about the fact that I kind of was just ruminating, what color would her hair be? And I had even said at one point, I feel like it should be red because I always equate her with Ariel the Little Mermaid and this character from DC Comics named Mera. And this woman, Jennifer, wrote in, Jenny, and she actually had this really great science bit. So she says, do you know the physics of light absorption in water? The gist is that sea creatures that are red actually look black in deep water. I kind of think it would be cool if her hair color is red when she's out of the water, but looks black when she is a fathom or 2 below the surface. Would also explain why her granddaughter, Ariel, got her red hair. I love this. This is officially going to be part of the canon now. Hopefully Amphitrite has a chance as I go forward to make more of a substantial appearance in the books than she has this far. But as far as I'm concerned, red hair. Because that's just cool. I love when you can bring in some science here. Jenny, thank you so much for that. Let's see who else we got here. Oh my gosh. So we've been seeing a lot of work from Yehi, who is an amazing artist. I just want to share some of hers. Okay. So that is not Pan crying there. That's Marsyas. Marsyas is the satyr who gets into the music contest with Apollo. And when Apollo wins, he gets to skin Marsyas. Look at that look on his face. He's whistling and Marsyas is crying. And I think Hermes is just hanging out there because he's well, the guy's going to be dead pretty soon. I'm just going to wait to take him to the afterlife. Which, I mean, I love this drawing. And oh no, he's actually saying bro. Come on, man. Here's another amazing picture by Yehi. This is, so we did Eris last week. Eris, the goddess of mischief. And so we have a portrait of her in the bottom, especially with the wall eyes, which I kind of like to give her, where her eyes go slightly askew. Then look at all that, I talked about the importance of her movement and her figure. Look at the way she filled the page with just tons of, just Erises, because she's just crazy energy. These are so good. There's a comic that I'm not going to show you guys because there's too much reading involved, but it's really great. Then she just did this straight up awesome portrait of Apollo and Artemis. And it's even using, I talked about how they're colored. Apollo is always colored like he's in the noonday sun. Look at him backlit there. And then Artemis is always colored like she's in the moon's sun. And like man, yeah, you're so good. Like, this is amazing. These are such incredible pieces of artwork. Here, this one is super cute. I'm sorry. There's so much stuff now. Like, I could just do a whole hour probably showing art. This one is from, I think her name is Jerry. I'm going to double check that. This is like Apollo holding baby Asclepius. So I didn't really talk about Asclepius in the episode redo, but Asclepius is the son of Apollo. He is the god of healing, though he's maybe more of a demigod because he straight up dies. Like, he gets killed. And there's not really any stories of him like being deified afterwards, so it's kind of an interesting role he plays. But he's actually rescued. Like, Apollo has his mom killed. It's a whole long story because Apollo's, we've talked about Apollo's a creep. And at the last second, as she's about to be immolated, he sees that she's pregnant, cremated. And Apollo godly, reaches in and rescues this baby. So this is Apollo holding his son. So it's this really cute moment, but like, we got there in a bad way. So Jerry, that's an amazing. I love it. It's just so fun. Okay. Here we go. Here is a picture by Moira. Another full setting there. This is Artemis running through the woods with her troop, and it looks like that's maybe the stag of Serenaya that she's with there. And this is just kind of funny. She wanted to explain her drawing, and her father related this to me. I do not draw boys. So, yeah. I have to break it to you. You kind of did draw a boy, because the antlers, that's a boy deer, so I'm sorry. But you drew a boy. You got tricked. I mean, I guess human boys are different, though. Deer boys are much nicer. Human boys, they can be kind of smelly. All right, this is... Here's Apollo chasing Daphne. This is by Nora. Like, this is the moment she's become a tree. Look how sad they both are. I love this. This is so funny. Here is a family portrait of the young clan. There's a baby Apollo, a baby Artemis, not baby, like young, and then there's their mom, Leto. Wait, is that Mantis? No, that's right. Okay. Boy, see, sometimes my designs, I really do draw a lot of the characters looking similar. And this is from her brother, Drake. He's drawing like this fiery, vibrant Apollo. And look at the giant, like, he's got like the quiver of arrows there. This is an Apollo ready to cause some trouble. I'm just going to show one or two more because, I get just so many great drawings. This one, why is it closing? All right. This one is from Mishaya, who has sent in some stuff. She always kind of like her drawings like are reminiscent when I drew, but she always takes them into a better direction. Like, look at the subtlety of expression there. That's great. It's the young Apollo. I was having some real trouble drawing Apollo in the redo. Took 3 versions till I got one that I didn't think was just disgusting. And she went and improved it better. Oh, wow, look at this. This is from Renka. This is Artemis. I love this one. I love the color. I love the design going on her tunic. It looks like it's maybe a little bit see-through there. And she has like these moon designs. That's just such great stuff. And, she also hopes that we're going to talk about Hermes' wand. We will, don't worry. And this one, this is by Addie. And this is really cool and kind of interesting because I guess I've shown a little bit of my book Dionysus. So this is Hestia in her true form, where she's not being wreathed in flames. So she's got some flames there. And she's surrounded by all the sleeping forms of her brothers and sisters. So, like, this is, like, her inside of Kronos' belly. Like, this is a major part of my new Olympians book, Dionysus. Like, and this whole idea where, like, she's surrounded by her family as they sleep. And I know I've shown a couple sketches here and there, but I don't think I've shown anything of this. So I think we're having a moment of great minds thinking alike, or at least my mind and Addie's mind thinking alike. I'm not gonna say my mind's great. Her mind's pretty great. But, like, this is a huge major scene. The whole idea that, like she spends her time in her father's stomach, watching after her siblings, with them literally rotating around her like that. So, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And I got more, and I can't show it all because I'm already 14 minutes in. And I have to talk about Hermes. And there's almost, oh my gosh, okay. So I was talking about how I'm probably going to eventually do redos on a lot of these early episodes, even ones we have, because as I've kind of expanded out this series, there ends up being a lot more information to say. I was kind of like being super short about stuff. And Hermes, you could argue there's more to say about him than almost any other god. I mean, just to start off with, well, first I want to share my personal history with them to start off. Got to start with here. Hermes is my favorite. When I was a little boy, I was in this special program in Long Island, where I grew up, Long Island, New York, called STEPS. And we did a lot of program-based learning, where we'd kind of like sit in a big circle and we do like free writing and stuff. And we would learn about I said program, I meant projects. We'd learn about specific projects. And through those projects, like one subject, we would learn everything related to it. And we did a huge subject on Greek mythology. And it's the thing that transformed me. Like, this became my favorite thing in the world. And I had to do an oral report dressed up as my favorite Greek god. And even back then, I chose Hermes. And there's a lot of reasons. I've always liked fast guys. Like, I always liked the Flash. And one of my favorite superheroes, period, maybe my second favorite one is Quicksilver. Like, I like fast characters. I've always liked that, right? I also like characters who are tricksters. I like wise guys. I'm a little bit of a wise guy myself. So, like, I've really related to these characters. Hermes always really spoke to me about this. So, before we get into all the things he's got of, he's the second youngest Olympian. And it's pretty cool that we actually get, like, a confirmation of the ages. Like I've mentioned before, I really like the chronology. Like, it's important to me. The reason we know he's the second... Dionysus is the youngest. There's a very famous sculpture. There's a lot of reasons because they state it, but like there's this very famous sculpture. I mentioned yesterday Bernini's sculptures, like arguably, in my opinion, not even arguably, the best sculptor that ever lived, Bernini. But anyway, there's a sculptor by Praxiteles. He was the greatest sculptor of ancient Greece, and very few of his original works have survived to us. There's a lot of copies, specifically Roman copies of his works, but one statues that we know was actually sculpted by him is a statue of Hermes holding baby Dionysus. He plays this part in the I wouldn't say the raising, in the getting Dionysus to be raised. Well, that's a story to be told in the Dionysus episode, and in the Dionysus book. We'll see a lot of that. Hermes is or let me try to Greek it up at least once. Hermes is the son of Zeus and Maia. Maia is, she's one of she's the daughter of Atlas, the Titan, holding up the sky. And she is the smartest of them. She's very smart. She avoids the fate that befalls most of Zeus's other loves. Hera can be very vengeful for good reason, because Zeus is the worst husband ever lived. She kind of raises, taking a page from Zeus's notebook. He was raised in a cave in secret, so was Hermes. But it kind of goes drastically wrong from there, and we'll get to that later. Before I get too deep into his stories, because his stories are legion, and I'm not going to be able to tell all of them, I want to just do a breakdown of all the things Hermes is a god of. And this is not a complete list. And I took the trouble of writing this list down because I will certainly forget things otherwise. He is a god of boundless energy, intelligence, and enthusiasm. And his enthusiasm is for causing trouble. So in order to keep him busy, he has been assigned more tasks than any other Olympian. Arguably maybe more than any other Olympian combined. So he is the god of peacemaking. Like, he's the god of diplomacy and like heralds. Like, if you ask a person who knows nothing about Greek mythology, they say he's the messenger of the gods. Yes, he was the god of messengers. He was the herald. But he's also the god of calendars. He was the god of astronomy. He was the god of writing. Like, pure just writing. That was him. Also the god of language. There's some myths where he's the guy who invents languages. And he invents languages because it's funny to not have people understand each other. So, instead of giving everybody one language, he gives every region a slightly different language. And it splits, and so nobody could talk because, he's got to be there to make peace. He's the god, this is one of the ones I lean most heavily on in my version. He's the god of thieves, and he's the god of liars. We'll get more into his thievery in a little bit, and his lying, actually. Did I say he's the god of language? He's also the god of speaking well, something I'm not particularly doing right now. He's the god of eloquence. Like, if you have to give a speech, he was the god you would pray to. He was the god of politicians, thieves and liars. Political. He was the god of merchants, and commerce in general. The exchanging of money and things. That's him. That's all his job. Which is already you can see how he's one of the most relevant gods in the world we live in today, right? He's the god, strangely, going like backing away from these commercial roots, which commercial actually has part of the Roman name of his. Like he's Mercury, commercial, merchant. It's all tied in. This is his roots. He was the god of like sheep and sheep herds and like animals like that. So like, and that's actually maybe how he started. Like that might have been his earliest incarnation, but as he grew in popularity and importance, he absorbed all these other tasks. Something that someone wrote to me somewhere in social media, I forgot where, they were very excited because he is the god of fables. And that's true. He appears in more fables than any of the other gods. And that's one of his, like, he's the god who would inspire Aesop and other fable tellers. And yeah, he's the god, he tells stories. He's the dude. Did I mention trade? He's the god of trade. He's the god of hospitality. That's a root thing he shares a little bit with his dad, Zeus. But, like, it also ties in with his idea of him being, like, a herald. If you didn't treat people right, Hermes would answer, like a guest. I think I said travel already. I didn't do very good notes, clearly. Tying into his whole hospitality idea, he's the god of travelers. He protects travelers. If you harm a traveler, that falls under his auspices. Don't harm a traveler. God of roads. That makes sense. He's also the god of boundaries because he crosses over boundaries, and he's the god of roads because he travels the roads because he's the god of travelers. God of athletics. And via that, he's also the god of gymnasiums because he's super fast. He's got to be in many places at once. He's like always on the track. He's one of the gods of the home. That's a kind of role he shares with Hestia. They have a lot in common, weirdly. But he is the god. He was a god that on your everyday life, he was a god that you felt you had interactions with on a daily basis. You probably didn't have much to do with Zeus, necessarily. But Hermes, he was somebody you had interactions with on a daily basis. I mean, because of all these things. He was the god of guard dogs, which also ties into the home thing. The god of gambling, which is like... the god of rustic divination, which is... So... Apollo, his brother, is the god of, like, prophecy, right? And that's, he's able to tell the future. Hermes is also a god of prophecy, but his prophecy is less grandiose. You wanted to hear Apollo's prophecy, you would go to the Oracle of Delphi and speak to the Pythia, and you would get all these things, right? You wanted to hear Hermes' prophecy, you just kind of like look for omens around your house. Like he spoke to you on a much more personal and smaller level than that. I'm going to wrap this up. There's actually some more stuff I wrote down, but I can't even read my own handwriting. He is the god that brought you your dreams when you sleep, and he was the god that when you die, he brings you to the afterworld. So, like, it's insane, all the stuff he does, right? And I think at this point, I need to draw a picture of him. We saw some of the pictures. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Well, okay, I want to talk about some of the symbols. So first, I'm going to draw a picture of him with his helmet. I'm going to talk a little bit about his helmet. This is something else somebody else wrote on social media somewhere, and I thought it was something worth mentioning. They were like, how long has it been, or I'm paraphrasing them, so I'm sorry if you're watching and I'm butchering your words. How long has it been that Hermes had like the kind of metal helmet rather than his wide-brimmed traveler's cap? And I gotta admit, that's a little bit of a stylistic thing I brought to it. It's not unheard of, you've seen it. He was most often pictured when he had a hat on at all, with a wide-brimmed traveler's hat to keep out the sun and everything. And when I was giving the designs to the Olympians, I wanted to go just give them a little bit something that looked a little bit sleeker. And it kind of like harkens to, if you're a comic book fan, like there's a lot of comic book characters who directly are straight up just copies of Hermes. He's one of the most superheroic looking of the characters. There's the Flash, there's Quicksilver, I mentioned them already. The first Marvel Comics character, Namor the Submariner, is just straight up Hermes. And then the original Flash, the one that you probably don't know as well, the Flash that was published in the 1940s, before Barry Allen, was this guy Jay Garrick, and he wore a metal helmet. And it's a little bit, my version looks a little bit like Jay Garrick, so his also is just kind of a bowl, like kind of like a metal version of the wide-rimmed hat. I was looking at like old art from like the Art Deco period. And like you kind of see like these chrome, like a lot of like on old cars, or like there's a movie theater here in New York City called the Angelica, where like the figure that's the symbol of it is this character wearing this like winged chrome helmet. I just liked the look. And I wanted Hermes to like, one of the things I didn't mention, he's actually a god of, he's not the only god, but he's associated with technology too. I wanted him to be kind of sleek and modern looking. So I gave him this kind of like more streamlined helmet rather than this wide-brimmed, like, kind of hat. Also, honestly, I couldn't figure out how to make the wings look good on the hat. Also, I kind of, I stylized his wings a bit. Sometimes you see him drawn with literal bird's wings. I made his, like, more of, like, kind of a stylized, like, metal. So there is Hermes. I have this kind of standard drawing I do of him where he's from, like, a three-quarter view or from the side, and I always black out his eyes. And this is something a lot of people noticed in the books that, like, we got pretty far into the series. His book was number 10, and his eyes were always covered in shadow. And it would drive people nuts. Like, what color are his eyes? What does he look like? And I'm like, he's the god of liars. He's never going to let you see his eyes. Because the way to tell somebody's lying is you stare into their eyes. And he's not going to make a mistake like that, right? So he's always got his eyes colored. Now, if you've read the book that is about him, Hermes, Tales of the Trickster, you actually do finally see his eyes. Now, here's where I was a little bit of a trickster. You see him with his helmet off when he is a little baby, and we're going to talk about the baby myths, because those are really fun. And you see that he's got green eyes, he has black hair. Nothing too crazy. I actually ran a contest on my Instagram of, like, people drawing what you think he looks like under the helmet before the book came out, because I wanted to see what some of the ideas that people had, and some people had really crazy ideas, and I'm like, I ultimately decided there wouldn't be anything super crazy, because we would have heard about that, right? So, but the ideas, they were super creative. Go back on my Instagram, look through them. There's some amazing pieces of art that people made. And so you see him as a baby with his helmet off, and then there's one panel. I think it's maybe the last panel of the entire book, where you see Hermes. I'm going to show you it. You see his eyes as an adult, but, it's not the last panel because I forgot there's an epilogue. He still has the helmet on. So that's the closest we've ever gotten to seeing Hermes with his face uncovered as an adult. And his face is fully uncovered. My girlfriend thought it was very amusing. She's like, you played a trick on everybody. After all that time, you still didn't show him with his helmet off. And what I think I might try doing now, I might try drawing a Hermes with his helmet off completely, an adult Hermes. This will be the only place I've ever drawn this for public consumption, I think. So should I try it? It's going to be kind of like designing almost, because I'm not really sure 100% what he's going to look like. So I did give him, in the one time you see it, I gave him pretty angular eyebrows. Because I wanted him to be able to kind of, like, arch his eyebrows. He's a sly character, you know, like the way, like, what's his name? The Rock can lift his eyebrow up really good. Like, you know, it shows, like, a devious side. Like, you do that, it's a little, like, you raise your eyebrow, you're like, I'm not sure I believe you. Or, I'm up to something. I think he's both of that. He's the god of liars. That's his job, right? His eyes were slightly turned up at the corners. Which, again, give him, like, this kind of elfish, like, kind of impish look. My Hermes looks very, well, he doesn't look super young. It's actually a thing in art. Sometimes you see Hermes, he looks like he's like 14. Like, he maintains this very boyish thing. Then sometimes you look in older art and, like, you see him with, like, this kind of long beard and stuff. Like, you see that a lot in the Archaic period or, like, on vases and things. So my Hermes, I picture he kind of looks mid-20s, which is, I think, what most of the Olympians do. I guess I could have made him look younger, but I don't know. A little bit of a smile. His face is a little bit narrower than some of the gods. Like, you know, like when we drew Apollo, like, he's got that big butt chin. And, like, a lot of the gods have these really great cheekbones. His cheekbones are just, I mean, he's young. He doesn't worry about this much. Oh, this is off to the side a little bit. Maybe I could hold this a little bit straighter. Now, people with an eagle eye could tell that his hair was always going to be, like, a black, because there's little bits of it that would hang out of his helmet. You wouldn't see it very often. So he's got this black hair. I made it wavy. It kind of looks a little bit like my hair, but nicer. Now here's the part. I don't know what this part's going to look like. I kind of want to draw it all smushed down because it's under a helmet all day. And I think I'm going to have to, because I feel like if it's not, he's going to end up looking a little bit too much like his half-brother Dionysus. Maybe make it a little swooped back. When we see him as a baby, we see he's got curly hair and the locks kind of hang down in his face. But I do think that's going to make him look way too much like Dionysus, who also has that hair. This is the problem we've encountered before with me. I kind of make my characters look a lot alike. Like, every blonde character looks like Metis. Metis looks like Leto, looks like Medusa before transformation. I got to do something to variate these things. And his hair swooped back a little bit, not just because of the helmet, because he runs everywhere really fast. And I want to give him just a little hint of a line there. Not because he's tired, but just because it doesn't look right without a line there where his eyes are. So here, for the first time anywhere outside of my sketchbooks, because sometimes I draw his face and then don't draw that part, like don't ink it. This is Hermes without his helmet on. Just for you, my viewing audience. So thank you all so much. Now, gosh, I went long. But I went long talking mostly about, like, showing art. So I just want to talk, like, Hermes, again, he appears in so many stories. I think I actually saw that he appears in the most myths except for maybe Zeus. Because he is the right-hand man of Zeus. He is the one that Zeus sends out to take care of business. He's also the god most likely to interact with mortals. And we also know he's a sponsor of a lot of heroes with Athena. And he just kind of appears. He's like this utility player. He's got all those jobs. He's in tons of little stories. But the only stories I thought I'd really get a chance to talk about today, which are... It's most people's favorite, I think, when they think of Hermes myths, is the stories of him and when he's a little baby. So I mentioned this up front. His mom was Maya, very smart. She hid him in a cave. The cave was on Mount Cyllene in Arcadia. And she just had this perfect little boy. This little baby just came out. He's like these big green eyes, this beautiful black hair, not swept back like that yet. And she just tells him stories. Like, well, she just gave birth to him. He's like a day old. She's telling him stories of her father. His father is Zeus, king of the gods, and how he's such an important boy. And he's going to do all this stuff one day, but now he's just a baby. But right from the start, Hermes is already, I always say, it's between him and Athena who's the smartest. And he's probably a little bit quicker than Athena. But Athena's, he also uses his powers of intelligence to be just, a pest. He's born as this baby, and he's already, the smartest god. He's already, as full intelligence. He's a year old. A year old. He's a day old. He's born, and because he's the god of language, he's able to speak. He knows all stuff, and he immediately hides this from his mom. He's just like goo goo gaga, poops his pants, all that stuff the babies do. His mom goes to sleep because she's had a rough day. She gave birth, and, she's hiding out in a cave. And Hermes, 1 day old, gets up and sneaks out. He's able to walk around. Not just walk, he's able to run super fast. He immediately, and this is a little bit dark, and I kind of like it. I like a little bit of darkness. As soon as he exits the cave exits the cave the first time, he sees this old tortoise. And he kills the tortoise. He takes its shell, wears it as his first helmet. And he goes ripping her all over the world, right? And immediately, well, he's looking around, everyone's asleep, it's night. He's looking for something to do, something to occupy all this intelligence, all this power, all this energy. And he comes across, in his travels, the sacred herd of his brother, Apollo. Apollo has these cows. These are the greatest cows that ever lived. And Hermes is like, I'm going to steal them. So he does this crazy elaborate trip. He trains the cows to walk backwards, and he disguises their footprints, and he puts on these fake footprints for him that are really big, and then he puts brooms on the cows' tails so they're kind of washing away their footprints as they walk anyway. It's all very weird and overdone. He's just overcompensating, but he steals these cows away. And he takes 2 of the cows. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Another thing that he invented, because he is a god of invention, he invented the whole concept of sacrificing to the gods. He takes 2 of the cows, makes a sacrifice to them, dedicates it to the 12 Olympian gods, counting himself as the 12th, because there's only 11 at this point. He's like, the 12 Olympian gods with me, Hermes, the 1 day old baby. And then he hides them, and he sneaks back into his cave with nobody the wiser. Next morning, Apollo wakes up. He's like, where's my cows? He doesn't know what's going on. And he thinks he's losing his mind. He brings in his sister, Artemis, to help because she's the goddess of hunting and tracking and things. And she's like, well, looks like some weird baby made them walk backwards out of here and stuff. He's like, you're nuts. That doesn't make any sense. But there's this statue of this guy frozen there. They're like, that statue wasn't always there. They're like, no. Apollo frees him up, and it turns out he was this man who was out late at night and saw baby Hermes. And Hermes transformed him into stone, so he couldn't tell on him. So he kind of rats out baby Hermes. So now Apollo's like, okay, so this kid really did this. And Apollo shows up at the cave. Now Apollo, as we know from talking about him, not a god you want to mess with. He's got a vengeful streak. He pulls people's skin off. You know, he does stuff. So he shows up, and even baby Hermes, 1 day old, knows that this is not a guy to mess around with, although he did totally mess around with him. He punked him, as I like to say. And he shows up, and he's like, so your baby stole my cows. And like Maya's like, what are you talking about? He's 1 day old. And the baby's like, yeah, I did steal his cows. She's like, oh my God, you talk. And it's this whole thing. And then Apollo starts chasing him because he is going to give him a whooping. He's going to spank this little baby. And they zip all around the world. And they're running super fast. And I've been talking about this, like, because this is the sort of thing that matters to me, like, who's the fastest god? And, like, Apollo keeps up with him, but also Apollo's legs have got to be, like, 7 times the size of his at this point. So his feet, when I drew the pictures, his feet look like, little Hermes' feet look like little wheels. He's zipping around. Apollo's not giving up. He wants to teach this kid a lesson. Because Apollo, you don't mess with Apollo. That dude takes slights very seriously, and stealing your cows is probably bigger than a slight, right? And he races, he's chasing baby Hermes everywhere. Baby Hermes runs to Mount Olympus, runs right up Mount Olympus into his dad's hands. He's like, hey, Dad, hi, met you the first time. I'm a baby. Remember Maya? That's my mom. And, like, it's a big day. And Apollo shows up a few moments later, and he looks like he's been through the ringer. Because he's literally been outwitted, outraced, and kind of like shamed by this baby. And he's like, oh, this baby, I'm gonna kill it. He can't kill it because it's Olympian, but you know what I'm saying. And he's just totally losing it. And the other gods are all laughing at Apollo because, like, he's been, like, totally taken down a peg here. And we know that's Apollo's thing, man. He's like, I was talking about this. Like, I came to the side of Apollo. I like Apollo a lot, but Apollo, he's got a little bit of an ego, and, like, you don't want to make fun of him, but he's losing it, and he's just like this baby. And then baby Hermes, god of diplomacy, god of trade, he gives him the lyre, the first lyre, the lyre. He makes it himself. He takes that turtle shell off. While Apollo's yelling about this, he kind of puts together some strings. He takes a little bit of cow guts from the cows he killed, makes these strings, makes a whole thing, makes this beautiful instrument that hadn't existed before, and starts playing it. Apollo's the god of music. He's like, what on earth is that beautiful noise? And baby Hermes is like, oh, it's this lyre. I made it. Here, for you. And Apollo, this melts his heart. It touches him so much, like this instrument, this beautiful musical instrument that's never existed before. This baby just makes this thing and gives it to him. And Apollo, he's just like, and somebody asked the other day, like, if Apollo and Hermes grew to love each other. And, like, yeah, they do. They're really tight. Somebody even wrote in the comments how there's a line, and I don't know if they wrote to me. I have to check that. That there's a line in one story where Apollo says, there's no immortal I love as much as Hermes. Because of this moment. Like, they have this cementing thing. And Apollo gives him his wand, his caduceus. Which, I'm going to draw the caduceus real quick. When he gives it to him, so it's a herald's wand. It would be a wand that you would actually carry to show that you are, on the level, like if you were negotiating for someone. He had used it as a crop to, like, kind of like, shoo with his cattle, right? He didn't have his cattle anymore, although Hermes does give them all back -2. And Apollo festoons it with these wings. And this becomes the symbol of Hermes. Hermes adds to it. This is a very Greek myth thing, where, like with the Aegis, with like Athena's symbol of office, how she keeps adding to it. Hermes gives it these 2 entwined serpents. I actually illustrate this part in the Hermes book, where it's from some same. Can you guys hear my cats going nuts in the background? It's from some famous, like, art where, like, there's these 2 snakes quarreling, and he kind of entwines them around it and makes them come to peace. He turns them into metal too, so I guess that's a rough end for the snakes. But this is his caduceus, and to kind of wrap it all up together, the whole Hermes experience. This is a symbol that, especially if you live in the United States, you will see as a symbol of, like, medical. Like, this is something that you see on ambulances all the time and things. And, like, that's one of the things he's not a god of. He's the god of just about everything else. He's not the god of medicine. And this is something, like, he literally stole that from Asclepius. Asclepius' symbol is one stick, a staff with one snake trapped around it. Asclepius is legit the god of healing. But because Hermes is the much more famous, much more popular, much more well-known god, a god who, even if you don't know gods at all, you probably know Hermes just because he's survived in so many different ways. Like all those superheroes I mentioned, or the FTD florist, or the Goodyear tire. There's all these symbols of him everywhere. His symbol has come to mean like the medical profession. And in a way that like I think it's hilarious because he's like a liar. He stole that from somebody else. It's somebody else's thing. So I was going to talk about some more stuff with him. I was going to talk about my personal favorite story of his, but I kind of want to leave this open to, I want to get some Q&A in here too. So I'm going to do the part where I throw it up into questions, and we're just going to have to revisit Hermes again. Because literally the myths I related today cover the first 24 hours of his life on this planet. There's so many more stories to tell. He's in like everything. So we're going to have to do a Hermes revisit at some point. But now I hope that you guys have some questions. And I have questions about what my cats are doing. So let's see. I want to hear the personal favorite story. The God of Thieves stolen. All right, I'm going to tell the story really quickly. It's actually a fable. And it is the story, this explains all about me, it is the story that explains why dogs sniff each other's butts. I tell it in the Hermes story, in the Hermes book if you've never read it. Basically, dogs all get together. One of the things I love about Greek myths is there's a lot of stories where animals, like the animals worship the gods too. And there's a lot of stories where the animals petition the gods, like the frogs do this in some stories. And they're like, man, being a dog stinks. I'm always hungry. I don't get to walk myself when I want to. I have to be, like humans call all the shots. And sometimes you get a good owner, but a lot of times you don't. And this just kind of stinks and they want to do something about it. So they see Hermes zipping over doing one of his 3 million jobs, and the king of dogs calls him down. He's like, hey, Hermes, you've always been really great to us. You're like literally the god of guard dogs. Can you put in a word with your dad, Zeus? Maybe we can meet with him, and like we could like, I don't know, get ourselves some autonomy, give ourselves some agency, make it so that we're not under the thumb of humans. And Hermes, he's like, yeah, I'll do that. So he sets up a meeting with the king, well, not the king of the dogs. The king of the dogs chooses 3 ambassadors, 3 dogs to represent all of dog kind, canine kind, to meet with Zeus. And the dogs show up. Well, here's the thing. The dogs don't show up on time. Dogs, they don't really understand clocks. They also, remember how I said dogs are hungry all the time? They stop on the way to Mount Olympus and they just eat like a pile of garbage because dogs will eat garbage. If you have a dog, you just can't leave stuff out. Unless you have a really good dog, which, I don't want to generalize. I mean, my cats are being bad, so why can't dogs be bad? And they finally show up late to their meeting, stomachs roiling with all this stuff. They're like, oh, we shouldn't have eaten all that old, baklava, whatever they ate. And then Zeus appears. And when Zeus appears, he likes to appear with a little bit of drama. He's like, bam! Lightning flash. Comes down. Boom! And the dogs immediately just poop all over Mount Olympus. They literally have the poop scared out of them. Because they're like, what the heck? And it's horrifyingly smelly because it's poop. And then they were eating garbage beforehand. So it's just like, it's garbagey poop. And so that goes terribly. Hermes, the peacemaker, the silver-tongued god of eloquence, his father's, we'll say second favorite kid after Athena, really, he wants to make this right. Like, Zeus is super mad. Like, he has to, like, clean up Olympus, makes for little rainstorms and stuff. And Hermes is like, look, I'm so sorry. This won't happen again. Let's just meet with them one more time. And Zeus, against his better judgment, is like, fine, we'll meet with them again. And Hermes goes and he just full on scolds the king of dogs. He's like, are you kidding me? You have your dogs come eat garbage and then they do this? You can't do that. The king of dogs thinks. Hermes leaves. He sets up the new meeting time. And he's like, okay, ambassadors, you can't do this again. They're like, yeah, I know, it's really bad. He's like, drink all this perfume. So if you have an accident again, at least it will smell better. Dog logic. It's not great. So they drink just tons of perfume, which sounds awful and disgusting. It maybe makes you drunk. I don't know. I've never drank perfume. And this time they show up on time. They understand the stakes. But their stomachs are full of perfume. And they've been eating garbage because, of course, they eat garbage. They're dogs. And Zeus appears again in a thunderclap. And once again, they just void their bowels all over Mount Olympus. And now, as it turns out, if you mix in a bunch of perfume with a bunch of poop, it doesn't make it smell better. It smells worse. Because it just becomes like smellier poop. And then Zeus loses it. And he's like, that's it. I proclaim forever, dogs will be suffering underneath the thumb of humankind. They will always have the humans as their masters. They will never be able to eat enough. They will always never be able to choose their walks. Humans call the shots forever because of these stupid dogs. The 3 dogs that pooped all over the place. And so, the myth goes, the reason why dogs are always sniffing each other's bottoms is because they want to see whose bottoms smell like perfume. Because when they find a dog whose bottom smells like perfume, they'll know it's one of the ambassadors who messed everything up for them. And then that's the whole story. I think I do a better job in the book. That was me doing off the top of my head. But yeah, I got that one out. So, do we get some questions in here? On the helmet of Hermes, what are the sharp sticks hanging between the ears? Let's go back to it. A little bit. So I was actually looking. There's 2 things for it. I thought it kind of looked cool. Just like kind of like it's almost like it points to what direction he's going. And I was actually looking at like anatomy of bird wings, and I was looking at dissections of them, and I found one where there was actually this muscle that was kind of like had been cut off. It was like this pinion or something that was there. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna put it on. Not 100% sure what put in there. That's sometimes you design characters. I've talked about this other ones. I draw them many, many, many times, and it just started appearing there. It just kind of gave it a cool look, a little bit of aerodynamics. How did Hermes get his sword thing? Yeah, I didn't even mention that. One of Hermes' many symbols, he has the helmet or the cap, the wings. He has his winged sandals. He has this kind of curved sword. I'll add it to the page. It's got this like kind of sickle sword. You don't get to see him use it all that much, although he does use it in the Battle of the Gigantes, where they kill the Gigantes. He uses it to cut off poor old Argus Panoptis's head. And he lends it to Perseus, and this is the sword that Perseus uses to cut off the head of Medusa. I don't know offhand if there is a myth explaining where it comes from, but I would bet good money it's a Hephaestus creation. Basically, if the gods have something nice, even if they don't have something that's that nice because my drawings aren't good, it's normally Hephaestus has created. Oh, you can't see it. There's the sword. Okay. Charlie wants to know why Apollo skins Marsyas. Well, this is not a good reason why he does this, okay, Charlie? Let's just be clear. Apollo, Hermes spends a lot of his time among the people. Apollo doesn't. Hermes has a pretty good understanding. He likes to play jokes on them, but he's for the most part not particularly cruel to humans, although he did turn that one guy into a statue. Apollo gets really offended, and when he gets offended, he's got a very thin skin. I talked about it. If you go back and watch on YouTube the Apollo episode, I talk about this. He was persecuted as a child. He never got over it. Basically, Marsyas had this double flute called the Aeolus, and he was playing it. And he made the comment, just boasting aloud, not even, like, Apollo wasn't there. He's like, I'm the greatest musician who ever lived, even better than Apollo. Apollo has such a thin skin. He hears this, and he's like, oh, really? And he challenges him to a music contest. And he says, if you win, to Marsyas, Apollo says, you can have one wish, anything you want. Anything you want, I'll do it for you. I'm an Olympian. I could literally do anything. And Marsyas is like, cool, yeah, I'll do it. And the unfortunate side is the other part of the bet was if Apollo wins, he could do anything he wants to Marsyas. And of course Apollo wins. He's an Olympian. He's going to win. And what Apollo decides to do to teach this guy a lesson, which is a pretty harsh lesson, he cuts his skin off. It's a sad story. If you want to read it, it's in, I think it's got to be in the Apollo book. Where else would it be? It's in my book, Apollo. Out of the Norse gods, who would Hermes get along with? Oh, that's a good question. So first thoughts, you would think like Loki probably, right? But I feel like the difference, we talked about this with Eris, I feel like Loki is motivated by malice. He's motivated more by mischief. And even though Loki is the god of mischief, like his mischief might involve killing people, and it does involve killing people. His mischief involves killing other gods, right? I don't think they would get along. I think they would view each other very, they would look at each other and be like, both like, you're the smartest guy in the room. And they would be very wary of each other. I think he would enjoy picking on Thor, because Thor is pretty dumb in the original myths. He's a real lunkhead. Who I think he would get along with very well is Odin. And it's really interesting, because I mentioned up front, this is a good way of tying it together. Today is literally Hermes' day. So in ancient Greece, it was his day. And in ancient Rome, it was his day. And that's why when you go overseas, if you go to like Europe and the Mediterranean area, like in Spain, Wednesday is called miércoles. In Italy, it's Mercole Day, which means Mercury's day. And that's his Roman name. He was called Mercury, right? Now, where do we get Wednesday from? Well, when Caesar went and met the Germanic people in his conquest of Rome, he saw that they had different gods. And there was a god that they had called Wotan, which is the Germanic version. Odin is the Norse name. That's a bit north of it. The Germanic people worship the same basic god, and they called him Woden, or Wotan. And Caesar looks at this god, and he's like, oh, we have that same guy. We call him Mercury, or Hermes. And it's this whole, like, so that's how Wotan's day is Wednesday. And it was because basically, we're descended from the Roman Empire. We just have a Germanic-based language, English, so we started using the Germanic names for the same god. And Caesar was just like, yeah, that's funny that he's not our main god. Our main god, like our boss god, is this dude Jehovah, or Jove, or Jupiter, Zeus. But you guys call him Thor. And Jehovah's Day, Jehovah D, is Thursday, and we call it Thor's Day, Thursday. It's this whole thing. It's this really cool idea that they map onto each other. I think he would get along very well with Odin, because he basically is Odin, at least as far as the Romans saw him. But, I mean, they're both very crafty, very intelligent, not prone... I mean, well, Odin's more violent, certainly, but, like, he uses his brains to get out of stuff the same way. So I did tell the favorite Hermes story. I'm sorry, you just missed that one. I just told it. It's the story about why dogs sniff each other's butts, but maybe you did see it. Maybe I went up too far. What else do we have? How do you choose who is narrating each god's story, and can we get a sneak peek on who is narrating Dionysus? I choose the narrators of the stories often based on who I think, A, would have the best viewpoint on the goddess or god of the story, and B, sometimes it's a character I want to shed more light on myself, because when you're a narrator, if you're a good narrator, you put some of your own character into that. So I won't even give you I'll just tell you straight up, the narrator of most of Dionysus, there's parts where we kind of shift viewpoints, and the narrator is a bit more nebulous, or maybe just plain up third person, is Hestia. So the first Olympian, she's the eldest of the Olympians, tells the story of the last Olympian, Dionysus. It's interesting. She doesn't have a lot of spoken dialogue in the book, but she speaks most of the narration. So it's the biggest view we get into the way Hestia's mind works. It's been really fun exploring Hestia. And as often happens when I do these books, like, I'm really loving Hestia now. Dionysus was always a big favorite of mine, but exploring Hestia, what makes her tick, has been really exciting about this. She has the first line of the book and the last line of the book. She bookends it. It's kind of her story told through Dionysus' story in a way. We cannot see the sword. Well, now you definitely can't see the sword, but I'll put it back in there. There, you can see the sword. Let's see. When are you going to make a video about Hestia? She seems very interesting. I kind of did. So, if you check out my YouTube, I have a bunch of old episodes. When I first started doing this about 2 months ago, when the whole quarantine period started, I was combining like two major gods in one episode. And one of the first episodes you have up there is I did Hestia and Artemis together. And that was because Artemis is the goddess of outside and Hestia is the goddess of the home. And I kind of compared and contrasted things about that. There's a lot of Hestia in there. I kind of gave Artemis pretty short shrift, but if you watch the episode, you'll find out a lot about Hestia. But I'm going to have to revisit both of them and talk more about them, especially in light of my expanded view of Hestia, as I've been doing so much writing about her just now. Is there going to be a Hestia book? Not by herself. She's on the cover of Dionysus. With Dionysus. She shares the book with Dionysus. The problem with Hestia is, with Olympians, I'm trying to retell actual myths. I'm going back to the original sources. Hestia only appears in 3 myths, maybe. There's the story where she hands off her throne to Dionysus, which isn't even a myth, it's just a mention. There's this one story I just can't tell because it's inappropriate about her Priapus. And there's like her role in the Titanomachy. And then there's a story where it's just kind of offhand mentioned that both Apollo and Poseidon want to marry her. She just doesn't appear much. I talk about that a lot in the episode. I think it's because she was so respected. They didn't want to tell myths about her because most of these myths, like look how bad Apollo comes out looking these myths. When a story about you is told in a myth, a lot of times it gets kind of, the god takes a few hits. They get kind of made fun of, and I don't think anybody wanted to make fun of Hestia because she was so beloved. And like together with Hermes, she was the god of the home. She was the god you would have interactions with every day. Always a good fact to throw out there. It was literally a law in Athens that you had to say a prayer to her before you could say a prayer to anybody other god at their festival. She was that important. Yeah, I feel bad. She doesn't have enough material for me to do a book without me really going into like speculative stuff. I think this might be the last question. I drew this sword differently in my books. I probably did. I need to go back and look at this. I think this will be the last question because this show cuts off abruptly at 4. What is the birth order of the second generation of Olympians? It's a little tricky because there's a few gods that you could debate where they're born. So the first straight up born, this is me piecing stuff together, myths, and some of them are some of them really contradict each other, but this is what I have pieced together in my personal chronology. So first born outside in the world straight up as a person is Ares. But you could argue that Athena was born first, and in my opinion she was born first, but she's born in Zeus's head, and she lives inside of his brain. Then Hera is pregnant with Hephaestus, who was the little brother of Ares, at the same time that Zeus is romancing Leto and impregnates her with Apollo and Artemis. Now, in between the birth of Hades and somewhere in this is the thing that's a little tricky. I'm sorry, not the birth of Hades. Sometime after the birth of Ares is when Persephone is born. And she's like a second generation Olympian we often overlook, but I think she's a little bit older than Hephaestus. I think because it's hard to figure that one out. I feel like she basically was like a 1-2. Like Ares and Persephone were born like one after another, different mothers, but same father, Zeus. So then Hephaestus is born. Right after Hephaestus is born, Apollo and Artemis are born. Artemis comes out first, then Apollo. Then you have like the weird stuff with Aphrodite, who she's kind of the self-made goddess, but she's created herself from like the bit of Eros that was in the sky, is in Uranus, right? So she comes around. She maybe's older, but I kind of put her in there. So she's born as a full-grown woman, and then also sometime around there is when Athena pops out. Oh, I'm gonna have to write this down. Then after everyone is assembled, then Hermes is he's the first 12th Olympian. And then finally, the youngest is Dionysus, who ascends to Olympus and in some versions becomes an Olympian and takes the throne of Hestia, who moves to a position of like a central position in the gods. I kind of butchered that. I might have to do a whole episode about the birth order, because I've done a lot of thinking about that. I have a whole document written up in my computer where I've worked out the birth order. DIY goddess. Somebody argues here that Cora or Persephone was before Ares. So she is the daughter of Demeter and Zeus, but then Zeus married Hera. I feel like Zeus basically had like a fling with Demeter right before he married, like right before he married Hera, and then Hera gets pregnant right away. And then I don't know. I worked it out that like Ares was the firstborn son, just to give like some sense of legitimacy to like the queen, like that Hera should have the firstborn kid. But then there was already Athena. It's all very tricky, and it's all a matter of speculation. So okay, I'm down to 1 minute left. So okay, woo! All right, if you missed any episodes, please go to my YouTube where I have a lot of these episodes up. This one will be up there later today. Please keep sending your art. Send it to me at email at georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. We're down to 57 seconds. So, really talked a lot today. Feeling kind of dizzy. Join me at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, where I'm going to talk about Pan. And once again, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all Friday. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.